All right, everybody. We are live, and I don't know exactly where this is right now, if this is in the right place. But I'm going to wait for everyone to start drifting over here. I had a little bit of technical difficulties, I'm not going to lie. But let's see how this thing shakes out right now. And if we don't have, there we go. Some people look like they're making it over. But we're going to see here in a second. I'll wait a second for everybody to start coming over. Let's see. We're going to wait a minute as I start. What's up, Nick? How you doing, man? Good to have you. What's going on, Lisa? Good to have you. Yeah, I don't know. Let me see. I don't think that's it. I'm not sure, honestly. Okay, that's the better one. That's the one. That's the one. What's going on, Ruby? What's going on, Lady Ann? Guys, so I used this last one. I used this software Friday with Jake. This one was still programmed in. And so when I tried to go into my other system with the music and all that stuff, all of a sudden it just kind of didn't work. So I'll wait for everybody to come in for a second here. I'm going to try and see if I can get the thumbnail up in here. I don't think it's going to be possible right now. Let's see. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. It looks like it might be. Nope. I don't think I can right now. That's okay. We'll do that later. We'll do it later. All right, let's get going. Great to have you guys here. Apologize for the confusion. Definitely kind of screwy. Got a screwy thumbnail there compared to the other one. But tonight's show is going to be a good show. Okay, so let's get into this right now. We're going to talk about Iran and Turkey and Israel, Syria, what's going on there with Israel attacking Syria. Okay, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Iran and Russia. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about where the war is going. We'll see. We're going to see how much time we have, how much we get through, if we can get to it. There's quite a bit to talk about tonight, and we're already starting a little bit behind here, a lot behind because of me overall. What's up, Cedric? How you doing, man? Good to have you. What's up, SRP Valkyrie? Yeah, that's right. What's going on, Mark? All right. So here we go. So last night, a NATO partner almost shot, a NATO ally almost shot at a U.S. partner, okay? Not in a war game over real airspace over Syria with no warning call made. That's where we're at with this right now, okay? The U.S. envoy on the ground said it out loud. Calm heads stopped it from getting worse, all right? That's what strategy looks like when nobody tested the assumption first. So I'm not here to give you the news update. We're going to talk about strategy, decision making. How did this happen? All right. I'm not political. I'm independent. I'm not going to be. I'm not one side or the other. I'm not going to tell you about who to vote for, who to get mad at, all that stuff like that. We're not going to start that tonight. But every story I'm trying to bring you is for decision making, strategy, because a leader sat in a room, looked at all these options, and they picked one. Okay. Then they had to live with it. So you do the same thing every week. I do it too. We have to look at what is the direction we're going to go in, what's the decision we're going to make, okay? And what do we do to make the best of a bad situation? Or, to expand and take the advantage of the situation we have. But they have to live with it on a global stage. These are the biggest case studies we have. This is all about leadership and decision-making analysis. And so we're going to get into it, okay? We're going to get to the work here. And so here's the roadmap we're going to do tonight. Like I said, we're going to try and get to all of it, but we're going to do justice definitely this first one. 4 segments, 4 tools you can use tomorrow and the rest of the week. First of all, Israel hits a Syrian airbase to stop Turkish troops. What's that all about? We're going to learn all about the assumptions they made. Why did they make this decision? We're going to look at the leadership decision in a very high-stakes game and how to test it before you have to bet your life, your career, your company on it, okay? Next, we're going to talk about Russia quietly resupplying Iran across the Caspian Sea. We're going to see if we have enough time to get to that one. And we're also going to look at second order risk, like what's happening there. The things that hurt you are almost never the things you're actually watching. Okay, so we're going to get to that. We're also going to talk about Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin ripped past $68,000 today. You're going to learn the ends, ways, and means and what happens when your best tools stop working. And number 4, we're going to talk about where the Iran war actually goes from here. Okay, so stay with me to the end. We're going to try and get through as much of it as we can as possible without turning it into a full Benathon. All right. And we'll go from there. Of course, we're going to be back Friday with the War Room Recall. Myself, Nate, Aaron, Jake will all be here on Friday. It's going to be a great time. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. I've got no music. I've got nothing like that. But what I do have is some appreciation for the chat. Big round of applause for the best chat in YouTube, you guys. So go ahead and give you an analog big round of applause. I'm going to see the emoji hands out in the audience there. You guys give yourselves a big round of applause too. Also want to give a big round of applause right now to all of our members. Members, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. And I also want to give a big shout out to all of our gold and platinum members. That group is actually growing, which is very, very cool. I appreciate all your support, you guys. It means a lot to have that support for the channel. And everybody's giving me the super chats and the thanks and all those things. It's very, very much appreciated. If you're new here, welcome. Welcome to the best chat in YouTube. Everyone calls it that, not just me. It's people who come in here and visit, and they all say, "What a great, what a great chat this is. What a great group of people. Very supportive, very respectful, very smart." Right? And I see that every week. Very smart. A lot of great ideas in the chat. So it's great to have you guys here. But give yourselves a big round of applause as well too. We're gonna get right into this and get going. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you're here all the time, always make sure you hit that like button for me. And the more subscribers we have, the more I can reach outside of my circle to get the kind of guests that you guys want to have on the channel. Okay. And I listen to you guys. I'll go after the guests you want me to have on here as much as I can and keep doing that. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. So here we go. Let's look here. So Israel, Syria, and Turkey. What the hell happened? Okay, so what happened? Early Tuesday, Israel struck the Abu al-Duhur airbase in Idlib province in northwest Syria near Aleppo. Okay, Syrian state TV reported 8 strikes on the runway. There was damage, but no casualties were reported. Why did they do this? We're going to get into it. I've got a lot of evidence to show you guys too. But Netanyahu's office said Syria was about to break an agreed security understanding by letting Turkish troops deploy at that base. Israel says it warned Syria, and Syria ignored it. All right. So the reaction: Turkey condemned it. So did Syria. So did Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and even the U.S. U.S. Special Envoy Tom Barrack, who is both ambassador to Turkey and special envoy to Syria, called it an unnecessary escalation that does not advance regional stability. So it's really important. Let's take a look at this, and I'm going to have you guys form some of your own opinions, but we're going to get into, just why this matters and what the decisions were made, why they were made, so you can actually apply this in your own life as well too, okay? And so hopefully you guys are seeing this. If not, I may have to do the trick like I did last time. Yep, add it to the stage, and then let me hit play here. Here we go.
I think we're very close to a significant escalation simply because, look, the Turks have been sort of playing this game for the last year and a half since Shaddad took power. And they want the world to believe, essentially, that the Israelis are out to take down the Shaddad regime, or that that Israel would benefit out of a dismembered or ununified Syria under Shaddad's regime, and that they can essentially try and help prop him up against these Israeli actions. But this is not exactly what's happening. What's happening is the Turks have been interested in building up Syria's military capacity significantly with a direct aim to threatening Israel's security. And the way that they've been doing that is proposing to sell weapons, position-sensitive equipment such as advanced radars onto there. But their biggest sort of ploy is to suggest that Turkey is there at the invitation of Syria, whereas Israel is not. And that is the line that they've actually been putting out. But it is worth remembering that when Turkey considered Syria to be a national security threat, back during the Civil War. It did not ask anybody's permission nor seek anybody's permission to enter Syria militarily, resulting in 3 major incursions into Syrian territory, as well as the occupation of Syria without any recourse to objections or listening to objections from the Syrian government at the time. But now it wants the world to believe that Israel is the major aggressor inside of Syria, and we should not take that seriously.
Okay, you can see there the title of this is Turkey's Double Standard on Syria's Sovereignty up here, okay? And this is kind of a think tank security group all about U.S. security, national security, and they're really watching U.S. geopolitics, national security. And so you see there are 2 sides of the coin, right? We're going to look at this, though, let you guys get your own take on it. But again, the major thing is we want to take a look at what is, where do these decisions come from? What were the assumptions? How did they make these assumptions and go from there? Okay, let me see here. Add this to the stage really quick, and we'll play this one. Here's another perspective, U.S. perspective, Fox News.
Gets in the way of efforts to reach a deal with Iran and reopening the Strait of Hormuz because they've been dealing with each other and cut us out.
Meanwhile, new strikes in Syria overnight have the region on edge.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Ying joins us live from Tel Aviv with the new details. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Reports indicate Israel launched strikes against a Syrian airbase overnight, prompting U.S. Ambassador Tom Barrack to release a statement saying we are deeply concerned. He went on to say an unnecessary escalation that does not advance regional stability. Now, I spoke with a senior Israeli official about these reports, and they responded saying highly sensitive intelligence was shared with the United States and advanced at the most senior levels of the various agencies and bodies. This official went on to say al-Shara understands that he cannot operate like the previous Syrian regime, which maintained.
So al-Shara is the Syrian president, the current Syrian regime. Okay, and so that's where they're at. And we'll keep watching this in a second. But again, the point being that a NATO ally, Turkey, almost fired on a very close U.S. partner, Israel, in a very inflamed region, right? In Syria, in the Middle East, while the Iran war is going on. And Iran loves this. Iran loves it because it's going to distract the U.S., or I should say they're hoping it would distract the U.S. If this becomes inflamed and a major problem, especially if a treaty ally is hit, the U.S. and NATO have to respond. So right now, Iran's probably secretly licking its chops and so happy to see this. And you can imagine, because this will no matter what, no matter how little leadership capital this takes away, no matter how small of a distraction, it's still a distraction. Okay. And so in leadership, in your business, in your career, in your life, when you have so much trying to go through the bandwidth, so much trying to go through, and everything becomes a priority, so nothing's a priority, right? You get distracted. You become diluted. Your power isn't concentrated and focused. You get delays. You get problems. You get sloppy, all right? So the more chaos Iran can cause, or just by luck, the more chaos that is caused works to Iran's advantage, is worse for the United States, okay? And again, we're going to take a look at what is the strategic calculus for why Israel did this. All right. You make up your mind. I'm going to present a few different cases here for why they did it. And you have to decide, well, first of all, as they said, Turkey has done it before when they felt they were threatened. Now Israel's feeling threatened because Turkey's building up combat power in Syria. They're no friends of Israel. Wait a second. Is it Turkey they're afraid of, or are they actually afraid of the Shahar regime in Syria, them growing to power again and becoming a threat to Israel? Lots of things to consider. Okay. I don't have all the exact answers right now, but by the end of tonight, we will get zeroed in together as I react to this and I learn more. I'm learning it in real time. I've done some of my homework on it, but I'm also learning in real time with you guys right now and giving my strategic assessment. You get to see me make the sausage here. Okay. So that's what we're doing. Let's keep on rolling.
proxy forces, it's possible he didn't understand what was going on or didn't know. They could not provide any additional details due to the classified nature of this intelligence. But this comes as we are tracking the latest developments between Iran and the United States, the memorandum of understanding expiring yesterday with no diplomatic solution on the horizon. Early this morning, another vessel was struck in the Strait of Hormuz by an unknown projectile, while Iran and Oman do continue talks about the strait.
Now, do you think this is by accident that Iran hears there's trouble with Israel and Turkey, and the U.S. is probably like, oh, man, oh, no, we got to calm that down right there, okay? And they start making strikes themselves, causing more problems. They know what they're doing. The more chaos that can happen, massive chaos, the better off, the better chance that Iran has of surviving, okay, of turning the American people against Trump is what they want to do, against the Trump administration, okay? They're hoping for some type of change, just to hold on another day, hold on a little bit longer. And we're going to get into that too a little bit later, but let's keep going here. Put any questions you guys have in the chat. I will jump in there in a little bit and get to them. But let's watch a little bit more of this and we'll switch.
The U.S. naval blockade remains in place, and President Trump has warned Oman against getting in the way as he pursues a better deal.
They want to make a deal, but they're not going to make the kind of a deal that I feel is necessary. Look, we're in there for one reason. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The Iranians have also released new statements about the conflict, with the country's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying, in part, patience, solidarity, and hope are the keys to Iran's resilience in the face of ever-increasing external pressures. And
all right, we're going to watch this next one here real quick. And actually, before we do this, before we go into Professor Mearsheimer here and listen to what he has to say for why Israel's doing what it's doing, okay, I'm going to talk to you guys for a quick second and talk about, so why does this matter? What is the part that matters most? And then we'll let Mearsheimer, hear from Professor Mearsheimer, because I think it's really important for us to actually look at all sides of the argument. I'm going to play something from Al Jazeera here in a minute as well. I want everyone to be able to hear many voices on this, because you're going to hear people on YouTube, and on the news talk with so much certainty. They won't tell you how complex it is. They'll say, this is what's going on, and this is why, this is who's to blame. It's very attractive. Sounds like, wow, they really know what they're doing. But anybody who can tell me they know exactly why all this is happening and exactly all the angles, okay, usually I feel like they're missing something. They haven't considered something. Now, there are people who have been doing it for a while, have a good sense of it. But there's more than two sides of the story. There are many angles to consider, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at it from a lot of different angles and then distill it down and analyze it and figure out why they're doing what they're doing, okay? And what is the next move? Like I said in the thumbnail, another bad move? Sounds like it, seems like it at first glance and at first hearing it. But why did they do it? That's why I have a question mark there. Let's see, okay? So the part that matters most, Tom Barak, the special envoy for the United States to Turkey and Syria, he's the ambassador to Turkey. He told Reuters that Turkey was not warned, okay? They didn't get any heads up, no warning. Turkish forces watched aircraft head north toward their own territory. Think about this, okay? They're watching aircraft from Israel head north towards their own territory and could have reasonably prepared a response. They could have said, okay, it's time to shoot these guys down. Had they shot down the Israeli jets, all right, or had Israel shot them down, then what? If you recall a number of years ago when, not that long ago, actually, when Russia was operating in Syria, Turkey shot down Russian jets over its territory after repeated warnings. You're violating our airspace. We're going to shut you down. Russia, for some reason, can't read a damn map. The Russians can't. They violate NATO airspace all the time. And I think it's also a policy to show disrespect, to test NATO. Well, they did it one too many times, and Turkey shot them down. Now, what is Russia going to do except complain and say something? They can't attack or retaliate against a NATO ally. It's a whole nother ball of wax, okay? It can cause an Article 5 response, which means an attack on one NATO ally constitutes an attack on all, okay? And this has always been very seriously taken. Is it as seriously taken today? Probably not, due to the way this administration has treated NATO. However, I don't think anybody wants to find out. And then all of a sudden they find out, oh, we were wrong. They still honor their treaty allies. They still honor their written treaty ally commitments, which NATO is. Israel is not. It's a partner, right? But a treaty ally like NATO, when a country stops fulfilling its duties as a treaty ally, people on the world stage, countries on the world stage, stop taking you so seriously. Okay. So this is why this is so important. And so in the words of the special envoy, the ambassador, Barak, okay, calm heads kept it from getting worse. The U.S. is now working to build a deconfliction channel between Israel, Turkey, and Syria. Deconfliction just means a phone line. So basically the U.S. is standing in between Syria, having a phone for Turkey and Israel, really, and trying to make sure that nobody shoots each other. No big problems happen. Why? So the U.S. doesn't have to get distracted and get involved, and there's more conflict and turmoil, and we have to turn our heads away from Iran, from the real thing that the U.S. is trying to do, okay? So just so we understand the scale of this too, right? So we understand the scale of this, that Turkey fields NATO's second largest army. I'm going to say that again, okay? Turkey fields NATO's second largest army. No, it's not Germany, it's Turkey. This month, Turkey signed a mutual defense pact with Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Why? They are starting to look away. They're starting to look away in this time from all pure dependence on the United States. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because of instability. They're doing this because of a lack of showing transparency and total commitment. Okay. So these are real things. And again, like I said, I'm politically independent on this. I'm calling it like I see it. But when people feel that all of a sudden you may turn on them, like President Trump this past week has talked about, South Korea, you're not so great anymore. We're going to talk to North Korea. I think everybody takes note of that and says, what? You're going to talk to North Korea? What are we doing here? What's going on? And this causes people to not want to prove how loyal they are or how good they are as a partner, as an ally. It causes nation states, when I say people, it causes nation states to actually draw away and become more independent and to form their own partnerships, form their own alliances, form their own security pacts, form their own mutual defense pacts, and drift away from an administration, a country, a power that they see as less reliable. It's very important to understand what's going on when we see these things, okay? And why we have to keep our word, why keeping our word in the international community, obviously in life as well too, right? In battle, business, and life, in geopolitics, at the country level, at the individual level, at the business level, in your career level, all those things, okay? So what is this mutual defense pact between Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia? Well, this was it. This is what it said. You attack one, you have attacked all three. I want you to think about that. This is a NATO-like alliance in wording, okay? It's a mutual defense pact. So it's not a full treaty ally, but a mutual defense pact that states an attack on one is an attack on all three. So Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan, right? They're all basically saying, you mess with any of us, you mess with all of us, okay? Who are they afraid of? They're probably afraid, obviously, of Iran still launching missiles and drones. Israel's a concern. I don't know who else they could be thinking about, but you can use your imaginations and put it in the chat what you guys think. Okay, we got a lot of smart people out there. I'm going to jump in the chat here in a minute. So what is the big leadership lesson to take away from this? Well, Israel acted on a forecast, right? A forecast that Syria's forces were being built up by Turkey. Turkey was trying to station forces on the ground there in order to build Syria's armed forces back up, their air force as well too. They didn't act on an event. It was a forecast, a possibility, a future impact, right? A future event. Turkish troops had not deployed yet, though, okay? They had sensitive intelligence, and so no casualties were taken, but they destroyed the airport where they were going to land, the airbase. They destroyed the runways, everything. They took preventative action, and preventative action is only as good as the assumption that you make underneath it. So we're going to do an assumption exercise here in a couple minutes, okay? We're going to get through some more of this, but I really, really, really want you guys to take away from this decision-making, assumptions, because behind every decision you make is an underlying belief, what we call an assumption. We call them assumptions because we don't know for certain everything. A lot of the assumptions, you don't have the assumption like, I assume there's gravity. I can say with 100% there's gravity on the planet right now, right? I assume that the traffic lights are going to work. They don't always, but I assume the system works. The traffic lights, the road system, traffic laws. That's an assumption we're hoping everyone makes and everyone follows. But in a case like this, when you have an assumption that's a 50-50, do you want to commit all your resources, right? You need to test the probabilities of your assumptions. What are you basing your decisions on? When you start a business, when you make a career decision, when you make a decision at work, when you make a family decision, when you make a personal decision to invest money, let's say, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin later. Like if your assumption is Bitcoin's going to $1 million by next year, I would say you probably got like a 20% chance of that. Do you want to bet the farm on an assumption with a 20% probability? Probably not, right? Okay, so still, it's not that bad of odds. Maybe you bet a little bit and see, and if it goes bonkers, great, you win. But this is where we're at, okay? And this is what I really want you guys to take away. So let's listen to this next one here. Professor Mearsheimer is going to explain just why he thinks this is going on and what the decision matrix is for the decision process and rubric for Israel. Here we go.
Few reports of direct Israeli participation in the strikes. Netanyahu recently stated there will be no withdrawal from southern Lebanon or southern Syria, despite reports that Trump wanted an exit. Given that they were the primary champions of this conflict, why are they largely watching from the sidelines right now? And what is Israel's current strategic role?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is an issue that doesn't get a lot of attention these days. The Israelis, in a way, sidelined in terms of the discourse about the ongoing conflict between the United States and Iran. And it's paradoxical because the Israelis played such an important role in getting the United States involved in this war, and they played such an important role in the 40-day bombing campaign. But now they don't seem to matter much in terms of the U.S.-Iran conflict. A couple points. One is, I think the Israelis understand that if they get involved in the fight, they then become a target for Iranian ballistic missiles.
So again, out in the geopolitical space, right, out in the international actor space with nation states vying for power, competing with each other, trying to work together to get more, more prosperity economically, more security, all those things. Self-interest is very important. It plays a huge role. Core vital interests play a huge role for making these decisions, okay? So if we want to look at why Israel did that, number one thing is what serves them the best, okay? Why aren't they involved in the war in Iran as much right now? And we could say that they're trying to take care of things at home, true. But as Professor Mearsheimer, John Mearsheimer is saying here, okay, he's saying that actually they're also afraid of the missile attacks from Iran. So let's listen a little bit more here.
And Iranian cruise missiles. And it's very important to understand that if you go back to the 40-day war, although the Israelis went to enormous lengths to hide the fact that their country was really clobbered by all of those Iranian missiles and drones, the fact is they were clobbered. We now know that. So the Israelis are not anxious to get back in the fight and become a giant magnet for Iranian ballistic missiles and drones. From their point of view, it's much better if the Iranians are firing at Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, and not at Israel. And it's better from an Israeli point of view if they can pass the buck to the United States to do the heavy lifting in terms of damaging or weakening Iran. So what the Israelis are doing is sitting on the sideline, and they have passed the buck. And this is in the context of the U.S.-Iran conflict. The next point I would make is that what they really care about at this point in time is Lebanon, and to a lesser extent, Syria. And they want to fight.
Okay, so now again, the interest in Israel, he's talking about Lebanon, number one, and to a lesser extent, Syria. So this is really important to understand This interview was done, I think, about 4 or 5 days before these strikes hit. So this is going to give you a good understanding of what the interests are. Israel's interests. Again, their interests come first, then they make assumptions to serve the interests, okay? So when they look at the assumption of what will help them protect their security, well, they've done enough damage to Iran. The number one thing was getting the U.S. involved. The U.S. is involved right now, okay? So the U.S. is rocking and rolling. We can step back. That's serving our interest. What else will serve our interest? Well, we got to keep working against Hezbollah, Hamas. We need to come back home. We need to stop fighting against Iran so we don't get missile and rocket attacked and drone attacked swarms, all these things to go through our Iron Dome and our sling and arrow and all the stuff like that. And then what else? Well, the next level is Syria. It's very concerning for Syria. So again, the interest, the core vital interest, the number one thing, okay, just like my interest is economic prosperity, your interest is economic prosperity, right? Also physical security. Well, we hope the rule of law, police, and good citizens are taking care of us at home, right? All those things. So in external security, just generally, right? I'm not going to go into all the details of issues we have. But then next, we got to work and we got to be economically viable, have an economic survival strategy in the United States. So to serve that economic interest, I need to do certain things. With Israel, to serve that interest of the core vital interest of physical security from attack at home, domestic security and stability, number one, they're looking at Iran. That would wipe them off the face of the earth. Well, the U.S. is taking care of that now. We can step back from there. Now what? Now Hamas, Hezbollah at home. Who else? Well, Syria next, if we see anything. So everything Israel is such a security state. Every action they're taking, you got to think physical security first, right? Domestic security first, to the cost of everything else, to the cost of whatever anyone else thinks about them, soft power, everything. Okay, so to me, at least that's my opinion. But just for us to look at this more analytically, let's listen a little bit more to what John Mearsheimer is saying, and then we'll go from there.
And badly damage, if not defeat.
Hold on one second. I'm going to pull him back on the stage here. All right. Okay, here he is. Let's go.
Hezbollah, fight against Hezbollah and badly damage, if not defeat Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And by staying out of the Iran-US fight, or staying out of a direct fight with Iran, that frees them up to concentrate on dealing with Hezbollah. And as you know well, Danny, they are up to their eyeballs in alligators in terms of dealing with Hezbollah in southern Iran. Hezbollah is another formidable adversary. So the Israelis prefer to concentrate on southern Lebanon. And of course, they're also interested in taking territory and consolidating their position in southern Syria as well. Now, let me make one.
And so I think this is important. He's going to talk about Syria as well. He's going to make an important point here. But again, considering why did Israel do what it's doing? What is Turkey saying about it? How can Iran take advantage of it? These are all the things to really take a look at, to understand more broadly what's happening. Because a lot of the times when we take action in one place, we will have second and third order effects that happen in other places that we didn't consider, okay? So again, make sure you're acting from your interests. Part of your interests may be, right, to serve something greater than yourself. It may be to, you have a deep, powerful purpose and a mission that is connected to something greater than just yourself. I'm saying at the personal level. But when you take action strongly in one places, and as I teach my clients all the time, there are two-way doors. You can go in and go out. Those are two-way, those are decisions that you can easily reverse. And then you have one-way doors. One-way doors you cannot easily reverse. Okay. So it's very, very important that you understand whether you're entering into a one-way door decision that you can't easily reverse or a two-way door decision. Okay. So when Israel does a one-way door decision, they bomb somebody, they strike somebody, they do these things. You have to understand that there will be second and third order effects from this, where there may be payback, there may be a lack of resources, you may lose opportunities, you may lose support, all these things. And again, the purpose of this is not as a news channel. If you're new here, welcome. Great to have you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Like I always say, okay, hit the like button for me. But I want to say this, is that This is a decision-making channel. This is a leadership analysis channel. We are taking the biggest case studies in our face, Iran war, geopolitics, business, massive, big corporations and the deals they do, and then some very personal stories too when we interview people. And what we're doing is taking that, trying to glean the leadership lessons, decision-making lessons that we can and apply it to our own business, our own life, our own decision-making, okay? Because again, leadership, I fully believe nobody's a born leader. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody's truly a born leader. Leadership is a skill, okay? You may have some advantages over other people, but as you expand and go beyond just leading yourself, leading 3 or 4 people to leading 10 to 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 50,000 to 1,000,000, okay? Or, to 100,000, we are going to mega different levels of leadership and communication and strategic thought, strategic analysis, calculation of ends, ways, and means, how the actions you take will have reactions in other places, all right? And so you're doing probabilities assessments, risk assessment, risk mitigation, all of these things. And then on top of all the planning, because planning alone will not move the needle, planning alone will not get you from where you are now to where you want to be. You have to learn how to execute relentlessly, execute opportunistically, execute consistently, relentlessly, and be an adaptive organism, right? That you are learning, adapting, improvising, improving all the time and iterating, doing it again and again and again. All right, I can talk about that part all day. Let's keep watching. But again, if you're new here or if you're not so new, you've been here, keep in mind, this is why we do what we do. I don't care who you vote for, okay? I don't care. I got my own thoughts. You have your thoughts. I care that you're well-informed and you have a critical mind and you are a critical strategic thinker, okay? That you can apply it to your own life and you can apply it to your own life. You can apply it to your business, your career, your decision-making, your relationships, whatever it is. That's what my goal is here, to upgrade your life. It's the Ferocious Optimist channel, and our goal is to upgrade our lives, all right? So let's keep going. Here we go. Back to Professor Mearsheimer, and let's hear the rest of what he has to say here. We'll give him the big stage.
Additional point on this whole subject. Going back to the Memorandum of Understanding, we've talked a lot about Article 5, which deals with the Strait, but Article 1 deals with Lebanon. And you want to remember, this is the first article in the memorandum.
The first article in the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran deals with Lebanon. Just want to iterate that so everybody, we're all tracking. Okay, that's what he's talking about.
It's quite clear that the Iranians wanted this to be the first article. It deals with Lebanon. And the Iranians maintain that the fighting has to stop in Lebanon. And they also maintain that the Israelis have to get out of southern Lebanon. And of course, the Israelis have made it clear they have no intention of getting out of southern Lebanon or getting out of southern Syria. I think, Danny, when we get back to negotiating again, when President Trump gets back to negotiating again with the Iranians, that the Iranians are going to play tougher this time on the southern Lebanon issue than they did last time. I think after the 17 June Memorandum of Understanding was signed, it looked like the Iranians were willing to look the other way on the issue of Israel abandoning southern Lebanon. I think that was the one issue that the Iranians did not appear to be committed to defending. I would imagine the next time you have a negotiation, that what you're going to see is that the Iranians are going to play hardball with the Americans on the presence of Israel in southern Lebanon. And I think the Iranians are like.
Okay, so I want to see what you guys think about in the chat. Give me your thoughts on that in the chat. If you think that the Iranians will play hardball with the United States over Article 1 of the Memorandum of Understanding, in so much that it was about southern Lebanon, that the Israelis have to withdraw from southern Lebanon. What I want to say about this is that I hate to say it, but I can't see it happening. My opinion, I'm going to tell you my opinion first. You guys tell me what you think. And my opinion is this. I can't see it happening because of the stated goals. And see if I can pull these up really fast. But the stated goals of President Trump, okay, when the war kicked off, let me just get this up here. Put me up here real quick. The stated goals when the war kicked off, okay, was number one, no more nukes, no nukes for Iran, no nuclear weapons, right? And then number two, the ballistic missiles, we have to deal with the ballistic missile threat, reduce that, destroy it, get rid of it, okay? So they don't have a capability for ballistic missiles. Number three, a clearly stated goal was to decouple Iran from its proxies. Hamas and Hezbollah were the first ones named. Okay, I'm going to see if I can find this. For Iran war. So just because I've played this a bunch of times for you guys, but I think it's very important for us to go back and look at this. Okay. And to see exactly, because I don't want to be making things up. I hear people conflating it all the time. I hear people, making things up, and this is what he said. Well, here's what he really said. Okay, here's what he really said.
Combat operations.
I just got to stall, bring him up on the stage here. Okay, we're going to bring him up on stage. All right. And let's listen to this. I'm going to get to the part where he says what the goals are.
Among the regime's very first acts was to
Okay.
back a violent
Yes, he
takeover
does
of the
this.
U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages
All right,
for
we know all that.
444
I'm just getting to the
days.
transcript real quick,
In
everybody.
1983, Iran's proxies carried out
Here we go.
long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed
Here we go.
core
I was going to say core national interest, right? Just what we were talking about, core national vital interests. This is decision-making rhetoric. This is strategic rhetoric. He's speaking. So he's, for strategists out there, national security experts, leaders, generals, anybody who's a national level leader, he's speaking in this language that you have to understand when he says core vital interests, like we will die and fight for these things. We will expend blood and treasure for these things. He's making it very clear that he's speaking from a national security apparatus standpoint, that he's backed up by his administration, which is backed up by his constituents. Okay. And so it shows real political will and support. All right. In business, that could be you with your investors. Your investors and your board believe in what you're doing. Your team, your employees who maybe have an equity stake in your company or who are just bought in and want to see you succeed so they have a good life, right? And they can make money and they get bonuses. So all these things demonstrate resolve. Okay. So as we connect all the dots and all these things, again, I think it's so important. We're looking at this as a case study. It's the most famous case study out there. I could pull up some company and be like, hey, look at a company you never heard of with people you don't even know. This is the most dramatic example of decision-making analysis, the nastiness that happens with, support, investment, political support, decision-making with high risk, high impact, high reward, all these things. Okay. And that's why we do it. So here you go. Listen to this. He's going to bring up the proxies. Listen very closely. Here we go.
national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to...
Okay, so he did say that as a stated goal. We're going to annihilate their Navy. He did that. I missed that one before, honestly. So he did say it. So goal accomplished. We're going to annihilate their Navy. They did it. That's a goal.
Ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world.
Okay. Well, again, we're going to make sure the proxies of Iran will no longer be able to destabilize the nation or the region or the world. Let's listen one more time.
Terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so we heard it from the horse's mouth right there. And the one thing that's important, as Mearsheimer is saying, okay, Professor Mearsheimer had just said, I think that they're going to really go hard on the forces, in Israel. They're going to go on Israeli forces in southern Lebanon. And so the thing is this, though, if you are going to ruin the ability. You're going to end the ability of the proxies of Iran, Hamas and Hezbollah, clearly, in southern Lebanon to impact regional stability and therefore and also impact the stability of the world, attack U.S. forces. Now, he left himself some wiggle room by not naming the groups exactly and also not naming Israel exactly or southern Lebanon. Okay, he didn't say that. But what I want to say is that he did say their ability to destabilize the region. If they're attacking Israel, the argument can be made that they are destabilizing the region. So I just don't see this being, even though Professor Mearsheimer says it will become a negotiation point, if they dig their heels in, I can't see the U.S. giving up on this and saying, I can't see the U.S. giving up on this and saying, well, okay, we're going to let that one go, because, yeah, Israel, you got to pull out of southern Lebanon. So it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's my opinion. Let's see what you guys think in the chat. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay. Let me see. I'm scrolling through. Cedric, what's going on? Good to have you. What's up, Ruby? Good to have you here, Ruby. Let me see here. What's up, Jasmine? Pumpkin's here. What's going on, Pumpkin? What's up, Keith? All right. Let's see here. Let me see what we got. Anything? All right. Okay. Let's keep on rolling here. Guys, I'll get your opinion right now. Give me a 1 in the chat if you think that there's no way we're going to be able to negotiate the point of Israel pulling out of southern Lebanon. Give me a 1 in the chat. Give me a 0 in the chat if you think we will. Based upon everything we just talked about, okay? Gwendolyn says Iran wants sovereignty, be part of the world. Israel wants to build hotels, new religion, etc., and they don't want anyone to say no. Iran wants to feed its people. I don't know about all that. I don't know. That's a yeah. I mean, that's a take you have on it. I think a lot of people would disagree with you. But again, there are two sides to every story, right? And I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me. So there you have it. But I appreciate you putting that in there, Gwendolyn. Paul says we are so broke we can't afford to pay attention. That's a good one. Keith says 1. Cedric says 1. User says 1. Pumpkin says 1. Paul says 1. Error says 1. Gwendolyn says nope. Okay. No, meaning, we're not going to be able to negotiate it. I agree with you there. Okay. Jonathan says 1. Jasmine says super 1. And Jonathan says gives Iran a reason to still make money in the Gulf as well. Good point. Jonathan, who fought the war at the war at the Wailing Wall? Seems to be the same fight 1,000 years later. I mean, this stuff is so complicated, going on for so long. It's one of the best things I heard Nate say the other day when we were live together. He said, this is such a complicated thing. There's so much to consider here. When he said that, it speaks about the humility you need to approach this problem with, because I've seen, and you've seen, we've all seen experts who know these things. They know the history. They lived in the region. They speak the languages. They still can't understand why they can't come to an agreement or we can't come up with a solution. And so that's where I get into von Clausewitz, right? We get into von Clausewitz on war. And he talks about war being this clash of wills, right? It's a political tool, right? It's a political tool, but it's a clash of wills, and it's emotion and chaos and hatred and enmity and all these things wound together into one. If you were told since you were young here's the lesson you get taught. Why do we hate this group of people? Why do we hate them? Even if they look like us, we hate them. And here's why. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways, right? Shakespeare. How do I hate thee? Let me count the ways. I hate thee for this. I hate thee for that. I hate you, right? So this is what's going on. And they're educating through word of mouth, through oral history, why they hate each other. Okay. And then on top of that, it's reinforced by bombing, by fighting, by atrocities, by actions on both sides. And it gets to the point where you can't see where it started and where it ends. And honestly, like when President Trump said that one time, he said they've been killing each other for so long, they didn't even know which way is up anymore. I think, too, most of us who don't live there and didn't live this, it seems that way. Okay, so it's a really nasty problem. It's a wicked problem, if you will, to work on. And there's a lot to consider here. So, yeah, he does, Matt. Yep. All right, let me see. Ancient hatred, for sure, Pumpkin. Yep. Lady Ann, hard to see how this will end. Yeah, Lady Ann, for sure. That's right. There's a lot there. I see what you're saying, Gwendolyn. They stop people to live, be normal. Yeah, they keep stopping people to live, be normal. Yeah, Gwendolyn, you got a good point. I know what you're saying, too. I understand what you're saying about what the Iranian people want. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's a tough situation. The normal citizens, the regular people are the ones who get caught in this. The innocent people, the children, they get caught in war, and it's a real tragedy. It's a horrible thing, you know. Okay, let's keep on going, guys. Let's hear the rest of what Professor Mearsheimer says, because I really think the more we can know about this and look at it analytically, strategically, critically, we have a way to organize our thoughts around what exactly is going on. But more importantly than becoming experts in this war, in Israel, in geopolitics, that's not what it's about. What it's about is you applying this type of thought process to your own decision-making, to your own life, to your own business, to your career, to your families, to how you allocate your resources. Where do you invest your money? Where do you spend your money? Where do you cut your spending? Okay. There's a lot to be learned from studying these cases. In fact, I will tell you, Harvard Business School uses the case study. Okay. The case study, how you learn is by studying the cases, famous business cases, and learning every which way, how it failed, how it succeeded, what happened, what were the thought processes, the decision-making, the analytical tools that were used, the forecasting tools, all these things. So case study method is very important for you to model successful behavior, but also to avoid modeling unsuccessful behavior. It's just as good to study the bad cases as it is the good ones, because in fact, sometimes it's more important, because if you can keep out of a bad one, AKA you don't shoot yourself in the foot, guess what? You're going to go far. You're going to go really far in life. To not shoot yourself in the foot is very, very important, okay, in life. And as somebody that knows all about some foot shooting, just like all of us, right? We've all made our mistakes, right? We've all pulled the old pistol out and been like, let me shoot myself in the foot right here. And, but we want to avoid that. We don't want to do that if we don't have to. Better to get a close shot in the foot than the full on blaster. All right, let's listen some more. Let's keep going. And then we're going to switch it up. Here we go.
Likely to say, we're not going to negotiate until you get the Israelis out of southern Lebanon. Period. End of story. Now, I'm not saying that's axiomatically going to happen, but my sense is that the Iranians are going to be tougher customers to deal with moving forward
100%
than they were when we were in the process of putting together
I agree with this.
The June 17 Memorandum of Understanding, which is consistent with my argument, Danny, that with the passage of time, the coercive leverage that the Iranians have increases. In other words, the balance of coercive leverage between the United States and the Iranians moves in Iran's direction as time goes by.
Okay. I want to get everybody's taking the chat in this. I want to get a little vote in the chat. Do you believe what Professor Mearsheimer is saying is true? That as time goes on, I've said this before a million times, as time goes on, does the balance of power, does the balance of coercive energy, coercive force, as he's saying, does the advantage go to Iran as time goes on? Give me a 1 in the chat if you believe that. If you believe the advantage goes to the United States as time goes on, give me a 0 in the chat. Some other color commentary I'll say here. You remember Pete Hegseth before, back in June, had said, look, time is on the United States' side. We sunk their Navy. We have an economic stranglehold on them. We are doing all these things. I said I disagreed with that, okay, because the economic shocks that are coming from the lack of a flow of oil, from fertilizer being held up, from ammonium, all these things, from the agricultural shocks that they're predicting, not to mention the midterms coming politically. I don't think the strategy that, I think one of the reasons that a democracy like the United States, why do we fight a shock and awe campaign? We need to win wars quickly. We don't have an authoritarian state where we can say we're going to fight and we're going to fight forever. How can Russia sustain 1 million KIA, 1.4 million KIA, not just casualties, because they live in an authoritarian dictatorship and they're going to do what the hell Putin tells them to do, or else, right? It's not that way here in this country. So that's why we fight fast wars, to try to win fast, decisively, and to get buy-in politically from political support and all those things. So, I tend to agree with what Professor Mearsheimer is saying. Let's see what you guys think. I'm going to jump in the chat here. Okay. I got to scroll down. Let me see here. Pumpkin says, yes, Ben, it needs to be quick if it must happen. That's right. Okay. Let me see. You got some ones and zeros. Okay. Keith says, yes. The longer this goes, the more power they get. Absolutely. Wanwick says 1. The Hills says 1. Keith says 1. Yep. People are agreeing with that. Pumpkin says 1. 1. Yep. Ruby says 1. Matt Burns says 1. Cedric says, hell yeah. 1. Hell yeah. User says 0. Okay. Okay, user. And there's a defensible position. It's a defensible position to say no. If you look at the super powerful economic tools now that Scott Bessent's putting on, President Trump, we're going to go to this later, is putting on a massive economic stranglehold. He thinks is like an economic doomsday weapon on them. Okay. So there could be a defensible position depending on what you're referencing, right? Paul says 1, says, it's to Iran. Mark says 1, check white 1. Think of Congress. Gwendolyn says Dems and reps should be arguing based on constitution. Now they're arguing based on business and socialism, waste of energy. Got it. Okay. Error 1. John says 1. 1. Jonathan says 1. Jonathan Mitchell says 0. Jonathan Davis says 1. Lisa Jones says 1. Keith. Okay. Got it. All right. A lot of great votes in there. Error says 1 as well, too. Yep. Jasmine says 1. Okay. All right. But there's a lot to consider here. It's, again, this is based on what Professor Mearsheimer is saying, based that time is on their side overall, because it's going to cost politically. It's going to cost real money to operate all the aircraft carriers, all the operations, all the sorties, all the things we're doing, right? And then the economic shocks, all those things like that. So let's keep on going here. It's actually a really good discussion. But by looking at all sides and not taking a dogmatic view of just one and saying, this is it, this is why it's it, I won't believe anything else. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I can't hear what you say. I don't want to, see it. I can't hear it. You need to look at all sides of it to make up a good, arguable, defensible position. And when you know both sides, the side you believe is right, that the strategy you believe is right, your thoughts can be defended. And you're like, well, even more so, I believe what I'm saying because of these 3 things that we just talked about tonight. Or you may change your mind, which is okay too. There's nothing wrong. If you get presented with new information and you decide to change your damn mind, I just want to say there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Because sometimes people are so afraid of having a new idea and being called out for new ideas, okay? So it is okay for you to think new things, new thoughts, and have those ideas. And I want to say this too, in this chat, this is a place for everybody, right? It's for everybody, and everybody's welcome here. As long as you're all respectful, we treat everybody in the chat with dignity and respect. We can have a great time. We can all learn together. We can all grow together and get better. Isn't that nice for once? We got a place where we're not all at each other's throats and that we can agree to disagree, and it's okay. And just leave it. And you might learn something from the person who has a totally different viewpoint from you. You might just learn something new and say, yeah, I didn't really think of that way. Maybe there's something to that. And you're going to get stronger for it because of that. You're going to have more depth to your knowledge. You're not just going to be this like paper tiger that's like, I believe what I believe, and that's it. I'm never going to listen to anything you say. And then someone goes, poop, pokes a hole in your little paper tiger side, right? And you're like, what? I didn't know that I was weak there. They're like, yeah, you're weak right here. Kirk. Okay. And they puncture a hole through the paper mache. Okay. But when you get in the mix, right? You get in the trenches and you discuss and you argue and you do it respectfully and you debate, you'll learn a lot more. Okay. And it makes you stronger overall, in my opinion. Okay. So, all right. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you think someone's going to enjoy this, go ahead and share it. We'll listen to one last little word from Professor Mearsheimer, because he's so damn good. And then we'll keep going.
That, of course, is what's happening. So I wouldn't be surprised if next time we see the Iranians playing, acting in a tougher way with regard to southern Lebanon and the Israeli military presence in southern Lebanon.
Super interesting. I just want this thing to be over. I know you guys do too, but at the same time, we can't, we're going to talk about the poll here in a minute that we had before. I don't even know if the poll's up anymore. It was from the other, live stream setup I had. But I think, just walking away is also very, very dangerous too. So hopefully a good negotiated settlement comes out of this, but we can stop the combat, stop the warfare. And we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. But okay, let's keep on rolling here. Let's get into our next little video. I've got one more to pull up here on the topic. I want to make sure we're well informed. This one's another one from France 24.
Well, let's speak to Jasper Mortimer. He's our Turkey correspondent who's based in Ankara. Jasper, first of all, is there any truth then to these claims by Israel that Turkey was about to deploy troops? He's our Turkey correspondent who's based in Ankara. Jasper, first of all, is there any truth then to these claims by Israel that Turkey was about to deploy troops to the north of Syria, to this airbase?
Well, Turkey issued a statement which condemned the Israeli attack as a gross breach of Syrian sovereignty, as well as international law. But its statement did not address the issue of whether Turkey had a military presence at that base. However, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a monitoring group in Britain that has a reputation for accuracy, said Turkey had been rehabilitating the airbase, which hadn't been used for many years. Now, it's known that Turkey is helping Syria to rebuild its armed forces, it's training them, it's providing equipment. So I don't know for certain, but it's likely that Turkey would have had a presence at that base. However, the fact is the base is more than 300 kilometers from the Israeli border. So if Turkey did have troops there, they certainly weren't there to launch an attack on Israel.
Okay, so I understand what he's saying. They're 300 kilometers from the Turkish border. From the Israeli border in Syria. So he's saying the troops there, they're not going to attack remember, he's a journalist, right? This isn't, a military professional or a strategist. He's a journalist, albeit he's a national security journalist, so he knows some things. But what I want to say is the threat itself wouldn't be and isn't from an attack from Turkish troops. I think based upon what we learned from Professor Mearsheimer, it's in Israel's interest to be concerned about Syria. It's its neighbor. It's the border, right? Let's pull this up right now real quick, and I'm going to show you guys because this is a great map to take a look at. Okay. So let's take a look at this one right here. And you're going to see there's Syria. Okay, so we're looking at Syria right now. We're going to zoomed a little too far. Hold on. Okay. Here's Syria. And we can see where Israel is. Here's Lebanon. There's southern Lebanon. All right. So all this is Israel right here. Occupied southern Lebanon. All through here is Israel. Okay. Tel Aviv's down there. And so this is right next door to Israel. So is it a concern? Of course it's a concern. Let's see where the attacks took place. Oh, look at this, right on the border here. The Israeli army is advancing towards the Bat al-Warda hill overlooking Belt Jin in western Damascus countryside. Okay, interesting. This was 2 days ago. So they're advancing inside western Damascus countryside. This is Syria. They're inside. We didn't hear about this one, but it's on the conflict tracker that I pull up for you guys right now. The Israeli army overnight Tuesday, 3 Israeli civilians arrived at Mount Hernon area and crossed the border into Syrian territory. Israeli army soldiers were dispatched to the area to locate them and return them to the Israeli territory. Okay? So a lot of cross-border stuff going on. I don't think it's authorized. Let's see this. Here's the bombing. New. Right here. Israeli airstrikes rock Abu al-Duhur airport in eastern Idlib countryside. Now, if we look in, let's see where it's closer up to the Turkish border. It's closer there. Here's Damascus, the capital, Syria. You can see how far the airbase is from the capital. Okay. But still, this is where it took place. That's where the strikes took place. So you can see them right on the conflict tracker. Let's zoom out a little bit more so we get an idea. There's Israel. Sometimes I find the map study is the most useful thing in looking at geopolitics and all these things. Here's Syria. There's Israel. Here's Turkey. Okay, Turkey right here. Straits of Bosporus. Bosporus Straits right here. All right. And then if we zoom out, we're going to see, as we go down, Straits of Hormuz, because you can generally see what we're talking about regionally, right? Straits of Hormuz. Here's Tehran. Here's Iraq. Here's Baghdad. Okay. And that's the region right there. Okay. Let's keep listening to what he's saying, though. Get back into this. So I think it's useful, this report that he's talking about. All right, here we go.
And the United States has weighed in, hasn't it, Jasper? We've heard from the US ambassador to Syria. Tell us a bit about what they're saying.
Yes, the US envoy to Turkey and Syria, Tom Barak, who is based here in Ankara, put out a statement saying the Israeli attack was, quote, an unnecessary escalation that does not advance regional stability. In other words, whatever was happening at that base, the Americans did not see it as a threat to Israel. Now, my own take on this attack is that, before Syria imploded in civil war in 2011, Syria was the one neighbor Israel had that the Israeli military feared. And now that the civil war is over, I think the Israelis are very concerned that Turkey is helping Syria to rebuild itself as a military power.
Okay, so we heard it right there. Okay. Also, this guy, Jasper Mortimer, France 24 correspondent, he's from Ankara, Turkey. He's stationed in Ankara, Turkey, has said also that before the civil war, when the Assad regime was still in place, right, that the Syrian military was one of the only militaries in the region that Israel feared. So after the Syrian civil war, they don't want that military to rise back up, especially with a former Al-Qaeda, former ISIS operative as the president. Okay, I'm just saying, old habits die hard, I think. I'm not going to lie, right? And again, this is decision-making. This is strategy, recognizing threats and opportunities to your business, to your strategy in your life. You need to recognize when, there's a potential threat, okay? And so, again, this is the decision matrix for Israel saying, okay, we're not going to kill anybody. We're not going to hurt anybody, but we're going to mess up the airstrips. We're going to attack material, attack war material, equipment, things like that. I'm not sure what exactly was in the battle damage assessment, but that seems to have been what they did. All right. All right. We're going to shift over now to Al Jazeera and look at this. I think this is also a pretty good take to have on it. Again, I like to hear many different voices, not just from Fox, not just CNN, but, all around the world, different angles, how they look at these things so we can think critically about the situation. All right, here we go.
Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Anna Burns-Francis. Israel's attack on a Syrian airbase risked causing a direct confrontation with Turkish forces. That's the warning from the US ambassador to Turkey and special envoy Tom Barak. Tuesday's strike in northern Syria near the Turkish border has been sharply condemned by Syria, Turkey and the Arab League. It also comes despite strong Trump administration support for Syria's president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, who led forces which toppled the Assad regime in December of 2024. Since then, Israel has destroyed military facilities across Syria to prevent the country rearming. It also occupies part of...
Okay, so we're catching this right. You know, the Shahar, who's now installed as the president, helped topple the Assad regime. Israel has kept destroying things inside Syria to keep the military from rising back up. Everything she's saying, I'll rewind just 5 seconds there.
In December of 2024. Since then, Israel has destroyed military facilities across Syria to prevent the country rearming. It also occupies part of Syria, including Golan Heights. So, why did Israel launch this attack on an airbase?
So they're occupying the Golan Heights, parts of Syria. I don't know if you guys caught that. And I know this is, for some people, this is master of the obvious, but for those of us who aren't always watching Syria, I think it's important to point this out.
Syria to prevent the country rearming. It also occupies part of Syria, including Golan Heights.
Okay, so think about that, right? Let's look at this. Let's zoom in on our map so we get a real idea here. And we know, we're going to zoom in on Syria. Okay, again, Western Damascus. There they are. Keep zooming in. They are not in Israel. They are in Syria. So everyone can take a look. Okay. And here we are. So inside, here's Damascus, the capital. What's this one? Israeli Chief of Staff during a tour of the buffer zone in southern Syria. We will not allow forces to establish a presence on our borders. Okay, so that they got that going for them. Israeli army overnight. Okay, that's another thing. Here it is, 2 days ago. The Israeli army is advancing towards the Bat al-Warda hill overlooking Belt Jain in western Damascus countryside. So we can see here, as she's saying, they're occupying these places in western and southern Syria because they don't want any forces stationed on their border, including the Golan Heights, as she said. Okay, just so for situational awareness, so we know what we're talking about here, and we understand that, again, more complex than we think. And this area of the world is not like the United States. It's not like Canada. It's not like Europe. It's very different, especially when we go to Israel. Okay, here we go.
So, why did Israel launch this attack on an airbase? What are the implications for all sides? We'll talk to our guests shortly, but first, this report from Alexandra Byers.
First came the fighter jets, then the explosions.
We didn't know where the strikes hit at first. Then we heard they were at the airbase. My children were sleeping and I was awake. The children and family got scared and all the neighbors around woke up.
According to Syrian state TV, 8 Israeli airstrikes hit this military airbase in the northwest, damaging its runway and storage facilities, but not causing any injuries. It's Israel's latest attack on Syrian soil since March. The Syrian Foreign Ministry called it an unjustified act of aggression, putting regional stability at risk. The airfield has been out of service since 2013, but it's just 70 kilometers from the Turkish border. Israel's accusing Damascus of allowing Turkish troops to deploy within Syria, saying Israel and Syria agreed to a security status quo, which Syria was on the verge of breaching by allowing Turkish troops to deploy. Israel warned Syria this would pose a threat to Israel's security, and Syria chose to ignore those warnings. The Turkish president dismissed the allegations as frivolous, saying they aim to legitimize Israel's unlawful airstrikes targeting Syria's sovereignty, and the accusations stem from what he called Netanyahu's expansionist and destabilizing policies in the region ahead of elections in Israel. Israel has systematically bombed the Syrian Air Force, launching hundreds of attacks since the Assad regime was toppled in late 2024. It says it's determined to keep the new administration from rebuilding Syria's military capacity. That's despite Syria's president Ahmed al-Sharaa saying he wants peaceful relations with Israel and seeks a security agreement between the two. Israel's also opposed to a substantial Turkish presence in Syria. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has...
All right, there's a lot here, guys. I'm letting this play because it's honestly it's very interesting, and I think we can get a lot out of it looking at some of this expert analysis. But I want to get a take from you guys. What do you think? Give me. All right, if you're Israel, put yourself in Israel's shoes right now. Put yourself in a scenario where you've got, like, say, a competitive business, a business competitor, someone competing. Okay, a competitive team, however you want to look at it, or you're actually Israel. And that's up to you how you see this. And you have the potential that a situation could occur where troops will go on the ground, or they're going to set up, a business nearby you, and you have to take action. And you warn them, you're like, if you do this, you're really threatening us. We're going to have to do something. And they're like, yeah, don't worry. And you get information saying that they're going to do it. So if Turkey's troops show up, Israel can't do anything. I think I got this right. I think the calculus is that if Turkey's troops show up at that base, they're there for good. And we can't get them out because we can't attack a NATO ally. We can't do it. We can't hurt anybody. But if we blow the base up, then they can't fly down there. So what do you guys think? I mean, do you think... And again, I'm not saying if you like what they did. I'm not asking you if you like what they did, but I'm saying strategically, as a decision maker, if you see that your team, your family, your country, your organization is threatened, do you just sit and wait for something to happen when it's something you can't reverse? Or do you say, we got to do this. We got to blow them up. Okay. I mean, not blow them up, but we got to damage the facilities so they can't show up. Okay, I know I was trying to make some analogies with restaurants or businesses, but let's just consider it for what it is. What do you do? Or do you let them just come and say, well, they're not going to do anything? But they're going to. They're going to build up. It sounds like they're going to build up the military, which is a threat. Okay, I'm trying to. I always find that if I put myself in the shoes of the other person and I turn the map around, I look at it from the enemy's perspective, right? The enemy, a lot of times, as a Marine, what would the enemy do? What would al-Qaeda do in this case? What would ISIS do in this case? What would al-Qaeda in Iraq when I was in Iraq? What would the Mahdi militia do? What would all these different people we fought against? What would the Taliban do? How would they look at it? When you do that, you can understand better. You turn the map around. What are they thinking? So I want to see what you guys are thinking there. Let's see. Let's see what you guys think. I burned their building down like Israel does. I mean, it's funny, Cedric, but when you actually look at the options and you think, well, no one's going to get killed, no one's going to get hurt. We are going to bomb this base. It's interesting when you're the one on the dime for security and for the decision. I'm glad I don't have to be involved in that. I'm glad I'm not. I'm glad I'm here armchair quarterbacking. I'm assessing and analyzing. But it's interesting. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. They're going through the chat, seeing what I see in here. Yeah, I think it's important. Turn the map around, and you got to try to see what are they thinking. And I think, and if you can't, I want to say this too, the ability to put yourself outside of your own thinking will allow you to be a real problem solver. And if you don't think so, that's on you. I'm passing on what I know. You can choose to think it or not think it. You can choose to believe it or not believe it. But I've been in some interesting situations. I've studied quite a bit about strategy making, problem solving, planning, execution, all those things. And so I'm passing on what I know, what I think is effective. But you can choose to do whatever the hell you want to, however you want to do it, right? If you feel more comfortable and happier staying in your box and, thinking what you think and it makes you happy and comfortable, then do that. But if you want to expand your mind a little bit, you turn the map around, see it from someone else's angle, and you might not like what you see, but maybe it'll confirm what you're thinking. Maybe it'll change what you think a little bit, but that's up to you. That's completely up to you. All right, let's keep on listening to this. I think there's some good stuff in here they're talking about. Let us keep going.
Been a vocal critic of Netanyahu's government and its genocide in Gaza. But the latest Israeli attack also comes into conflict with U.S. policy towards Syria. Washington's been forging close ties with President Shara, making him the first Syrian leader to ever visit the White House. The U.S. ambassador to Turkey and special envoy Tom Barrack condemned the attacks as an unnecessary escalation, saying Shara's government wasn't predatory or maintaining proxy forces, and has repeatedly indicated a preference for de-escalation with Israel. Barrack says the U.S. will continue to host diplomatic discussions to try to prevent any future attacks. Alexandra Byers, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
All right. So it seems like they're obviously getting sideways with the U.S., which is probably not what they want to do with that right there. Okay, we beat that one to death. We're going to move on here. Okay. So a couple things to think about here. One point of view is this, that if you guys have seen that some people argue that once Iran was pushed down, all right, Turkey and Israel would collide next. There's some people saying that out there, okay? And so again, turn the map around, see another angle. There are some analysts out there saying that once Iran was pushed down, Turkey and Israel would collide next, okay? And Syria would be the ground where it happened. Think about that, okay? And this is coming from some expert analysis. And people even push this even a bit further too. They say that the emerging order in the region is 4 states: Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey. Think about that again. The emerging order in the region, in the Middle East, is Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey. And that a Turkey eventually stops sitting on the bench. They're going to want to make sure, because again, they're a NATO treaty ally. They have the U.S. on their side. Hell no, they're not going to let Iran lead again the whole time. They're not going to let Israel lead. They're not going to let Russia or China, who aren't even there, lead. Turkey is going to step up, and Israel knows that. And part of it is they've got a good relationship with Syria. So something to consider, okay? And we talked about Professor Mearsheimer as another analyst and what he sees, all right, that he thinks the U.S. got pulled into this war and has very little idea what winning looks like, okay? From his seat, every new front is a new commitment, and that the U.S. did not choose and can't leave easily. As we said, it's distraction. Total distraction plays into Iran's hands, gives them the advantage, as we talked about. And yet another angle, the more conservative, much more conservative angle, is exactly the opposite. The Gulf states, some people view the Gulf states as being pro-American, and they've been pro-American for a while now, okay? And that Israel is going to come out of this stronger. They're coming out of this stronger. Some people argue this as well. And that Iran is going to need a decade to rebuild. Okay, again, this is a very conservative viewpoint. The framing for this is that Israel is enforcing red line deterrence right now by doing this. It's enforcing deterrence, not causing casualties, and the deterrence is actually working. Okay, that's what some people say. Some people are saying that. I'm not saying that's what I'm saying. I'm showing you each one of the arguments. And then a more systemic level, a systems level analysis is that America is really stepping back from the world order it has built, okay? And we can see that in a lot of ways. But again, this is another argument that's out there, a systems level argument. And when the world policeman, the U.S., steps back, allies will start managing their own disputes. Also, in the example, i.e., of Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia forming a mutual defense pact, right? They start managing their own disputes with force instead of a process. So all 4 of these viewpoints would agree that nobody called Ankara first. No one said. Israel didn't say, hey, are you sending people? You can't send people. If you do, we got to do this. If we see something's happening, we got to bomb them, right? And arguably, they could have bombed the runway at another time. They could have checked in with the U.S. They could have checked in with Ankara. They said they shared intelligence with the U.S. Who knows? But there's a lot here. So the U.S. problem with this is that Turkey is a NATO ally, and Israel is America's closest partner in the region. The U.S. is standing between both of them, holding the phones, trying to de-escalate, okay? So communication architecture for this will cost a lot less than using military force to send messages. So I think this is the really important thing to take away. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to take a look. I told you we're going to do a little exercise in this, but I want you to take a look at what are your top 3 assumptions What are your top 3 assumptions that you're making right now? Not your goals, but your assumptions. Take a look at what are you assuming as you're making big decisions. And as you're making these assumptions, I want you really to think, how certain am I about each one of these assumptions? How certain am I about, like I said, that there's going to be gravity, 100%, that the traffic lights are going to work, 90%, right? That my company is going to actually pay me on time. Depends on the company you're with, right? All these things. So testing your assumptions, I want you to write down what your assumptions are. Take a look. When you have big decisions coming up, what are you basing the big decisions on? What are the assumptions? And then what are the probabilities, the certainties you have in those assumptions, okay? If you fly by the seat of your pants, you just go by your gut and you go by emotions, that'll work for a while. But I'm going to tell you, as things get more complex, you want to make sure you're taking a look at with a cool head, let cooler heads prevail, and take a look with a cool head. What am I doing? What am I basing these decisions on? Okay, especially as things get complex. Now, if it's something you've done 1,000, 10,000 times before, you can trust your gut and move on. You're probably going to make the right decision every time. But as you get into areas that are more complex, you don't have as much experience. It's a new experience, new leadership experience, new decision experience. You're probably going to have to go ahead and make sure that you are looking at your assumptions, looking at what are you making decisions on, what are the impact, the second and third order effects for the decisions you're making, all those things as well too. All right, let's roll on here. I'm checking out the chat and hey, welcome. I see everybody here. Let's see. Okay, welcome. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Appreciate you guys being here. Great to have you. Best chat on YouTube. You guys make it a lot of fun. We got a lot of smart people here. And let's go ahead and we're going to roll into our next topic here. Segment 2, Russia, Iran, and the NATO question. So what happened? Well, there was a news report Monday of a European government document confirmed by a Western official showing Russia is shipping drone parts, ammunition, and TNT to Iran across the Caspian Sea. Iran is rebuilding stockpiles that the U.S. and Israel strikes have destroyed. The reversal here. For years, this ran in one direction. Iran was resupplying Russia, right? They send Shahed drones to them for the Ukraine war. Now Moscow is supplying Tehran. That flip matters a lot more than the tonnage. Let me go ahead and pull this up, an article here, so you guys can see this. Let me pull this up real quick, everybody. Here we go. All right. And so here's the article. Added to the stage now, because now I know how to do it. Russia supplying Iran with drone components, ammunition amid war with U.S. NBC reports. Okay, this is from Volodymyr Ivanshin. Clearly a Russian, I believe. Maybe Ukrainian, but it looks like Russian to me. Russia supplying Iran with drone components, ammunition amid war, U.S. NBC with U.S. With the war with the U.S. NBC reports. Key takeaways. Russia supplying Iran with ammunition, drone components in the Caspian Sea, according to European government documents cited by NBC News. Let's look a little bit more here. Ukrainian forces struck an Iranian ship transporting military cargo between Iran and Russia in the Caspian Sea on July 25th, leading to tensions between the two countries. Moscow and Tehran have deepened cooperation with Iran supplying Russia with military equipment and drones while Russia continues war against Ukraine. Russia is supplying Iran with the drone components and ammunition. Over 24 ships traveled via shipping routes in the sea to replenish Tehran's stockpiles amid U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iran, the document said. It was verified by an unnamed Western official, so it's been verified. As Moscow and the Middle East country continued cooperation, Ukrainian forces on July 25th struck an Iranian ship transporting military cargo between Iran and Russia in the Caspian Sea. Ukraine's security service said. Iran's foreign ministry claimed the strike targeted a commercial vessel, killing one sailor. Okay, so hundreds of Russian Shahed-type drones, originally designed by Iran, regularly target Ukrainian civilians. And Tehran has supplied Russia with military equipment and drones for a long time. We know all that. Okay, so I want to get into this a little bit here because this is important. And it's going to get into our crypto story a little bit later. We talked about last Wednesday. Do you think that just like Russia, that Tehran is using crypto to go around the U.S.-led financial system? And I think almost unequivocally, everyone said yes. I think they are too. I think they've been doing it for a little while. How they're also still keeping up. I think Russia's probably paying them. China's paying them in crypto. You can't really track these things. Okay. And yes, it's on the blockchain. You can see it, but you can't stop the transactions. So, and I think also you can't see really who they belong to as well. So let's talk about the route here. The Long War Journal reports that shipping from the Meg flop based in Russia's Dagestan region and already under Western sanctions has moved arms between the two for years. Israel struck the Iranian Caspian port of Bandar Anzali in March to cut the shipping route, but the shipments have since resumed. 5 countries border the Caspian, many ports. You cannot close it by hitting one. Lots of ports, much harder than even I would have thought, honestly. So let me pull this up. I'm going to pull up this so we can take a look again here and pull up Iran. Again, here's the Caspian Sea. Here's Tehran. Here's the Caspian. Here are some of the ports here. But they're saying there are many ports in the Caspian Sea. Okay, this is the Caspian Sea. If I zoom out, you can see where it is with Russia. There it is. Borders with Russia and the Caspian Sea. So they can come right from southern Russia, right to Tehran, and they can resupply them all day by ship. And as Israel has said, as Ukraine said, as many are saying now, it's not so easy just to shut down the Caspian Sea as a port. It's much more difficult than you think, because even though you attack one port and you, let's say you set up a combat air patrol with drones and aircraft, it doesn't mean you're going to see everything coming into the various ports in the area. If you look at this, this is a pretty big coastline, pretty good coastline here for Iran. Okay. And who's to say they don't land in Turkmenistan and then come through, right? Who's to say that doesn't happen? I don't know. Or Azerbaijan, on the corner of Azerbaijan, and then come down. We don't know what secret agreements. And Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan can be like, we don't know. We didn't know they were doing that. We had no clue. So we also don't know what secret agreements are going on. It's a very hard thing to patrol so much coastline. That's what we're finding out. So is Russia doing that? Let's see your reaction in the chat. Do you guys think Russia is regularly resupplying Iran right now with drone parts, ammunition, and other supplies? Give me a 1 in the chat if you think that, okay? And then give me a 0 in the chat if you don't think so. But we're going to hit this one pretty quickly because we got some other stuff to cover. And don't think we're going to do a Benathon tonight. So that is what's going on. But what's in the pipe? What's in this? Let me pull this up right now. What is in there? So reported are drone components, antennas, GPS jamming, or they have antennas that resist GPS jamming. Okay, so they're unjammable or very hard to jam drones. A reported contract for 500 Verba shoulder-fired air defense launchers and 2,500 missiles by 2029. So this is the document said there's an order for all these things. Separately, Reuters reported Iran is receiving 300 to 400 shoulder-fired systems from China, right? We talked about this before. This could cause serious problems for American sorties, flying combat missions, dropping bombs, doing all those things, all right? Neither Moscow nor Beijing is publicly reported to be sending long-range air defense systems Iran actually needs, just shoulder-fired. Why is Russia doing this? Well, because it's cheap. It keeps the U.S. tied down. It keeps us, out of thinking about them, worrying about them. Also, something else very, very important. If this is still going on, there's still instability. People aren't going to be shipping, meaning the oil companies won't be shipping oil from the Persian Gulf through the Strait. Therefore, higher oil prices will occur. Higher oil prices help the Kremlin's budget, right? Because they are a net exporter of oil. And higher oil prices drain American Patriot missiles that Ukraine desperately needs. The more tied down we are in the war, the more we have to keep the Patriot missiles locked up. Therefore, they're not in Ukraine. Okay, so you see how all this works. And here's the NATO piece of this. On August 7th, U.S. intelligence assets reported by CNN and CBS and Wall Street Journal said Putin may be more willing to test NATO. We've seen this recently. A cyber attack, unmarked forces, or a small ground incursion anytime between this autumn and 2029. I say he'll wait till 2029. I don't think he wants to test President Trump. I have reliable sources that told me Also, it is their assessment that the Chinese do not want to test President Trump either. They don't know what they're going to get. Very unpredictable. So, in many ways, it's bad to be so unpredictable, but in some ways, you won't get tested by the other crazies, okay, like Putin. And so the most extreme version of this is rated low probability for Putin testing before 2029, but still is a chance, right? But I don't think so. I don't think it'll happen personally until after 2029. When Trump's out of office, I think it's open season. Who knows if Putin survives until then. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this little thing here. What is going on? What is Russia trying to do? Make sure I have this up. There we go. So what are they trying to do? Why do they want to do this? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but the U.S. fights Iran, right? Fighting Iran burns Patriot interceptors. It raises the oil prices. Burning Patriot interceptors means fewer for Ukraine. Fewer for Ukraine means Russian ballistic missiles get through. Okay, it's a good thing. The Institute for the Study of War counted Russian ballistic strikes on Ukraine rising from 61 in April to 198 in July. Think about that. 61 in April to 198 in July. Many, many more strikes. Much better chance for victory for Russia. And honestly, maybe not even victory, but the chance for Putin to actually stay in power and not be thrown out of office, right? Again, dictators are riding the tiger. If they step off the tiger gets off and then eats them. The tiger is the people in any dictatorship, and Putin is definitely riding the tiger for sure. Meanwhile, Russia hands Iran the parts to keep firing, keep fighting, which burns more patriots. It keeps the oil prices high, right? Nobody's planning on that loop. It just happened itself. It built itself. Iran saw it. Russia saw it. They're like, keep this going. This is good. Okay. CNN has reported that the president has privately complained about dwindling stockpiles from the Iran war. That's a resource problem showing up at the top of the house, right? Which is where the resource problems always end up eventually. Eventually, it always trickles up because he's like, do this. And they're like, yeah, we can't do that. Why can't we do it? Well, boss, because the magazines are empty. Well, what do you mean the magazines are empty? You told me we're good, right? Well, and we saw this last week. No, I didn't know. He's the one that said it. Okay, when they said Hegseth turned on his deputy. Okay. Again, this is, I'm not doing this to single out certain people. This is a leadership study, okay? And when you're not managing the resources properly, communication isn't flowing, you're afraid to tell the boss the bad news, which has been a trend when in a leadership team, only value is, the only major value is loyalty. People don't want to rock the boat because they don't want to get fired. If you're the guy bringing up the bad news, this isn't working, look what's going on, we're losing all this stuff, you might not survive. And so instead, they get conditioned to not tell them what's going on. They get conditioned to not speak the brutal, honest truth all the time. Okay, that's my opinion. You guys call it like you see it. That's how I see it. Okay, so the read on this is that the cost of fighting on someone else's timeline, right? This is the cost of fighting on someone else's timeline. The counter here is that Russia has been sidelined in the Middle East and is more focused on defending its own borders right now than projecting power. So both of these can be partly right. Russia's not a Middle East power broker right now, but it's also not idle. It's still doing something to influence what's going on there. Okay. So I just want to get in the chat from you guys and see what you think. Let me see, right now, if you think that Russia is doing this in order to influence the war and keep it going so it can have a better shot in Ukraine, or do you think it's doing it for, just tell me what you guys think in the chat, or do you think it's because it's trying to keep the oil prices high for everything else, not just Ukraine, but to, keep Putin in power, enrich itself to get more money? So tell me what you think in the chat. I want to see about that. All right. We'll get in there in a second. All right. I told you guys I'd hit that one briefly. We're not going to spend too much time on that, but we are going to move on to our next event here. Move on to our next topic. And the next topic we're going to talk about really fast is Bitcoin, crypto, and the dollar. Okay. We're going to talk about the ways and means that form the ends. Okay. So what happened today? Well, a big event happened today. Bitcoin pushed past $68,000 today. It was roughly up 7% in 24 hours. Crypto-linked equities moved even harder. In strategy, Bitcoin, big Bitcoin holder, MicroStrategy, now called Strategy. CEO is Michael Saylor. I've talked about him before. Okay. They're up about 13% for their stock. So before anybody gets excited, though, let's talk about why this happened. All right. I'm going to pull this up really quick so we can see. Look at this article. Check this out. You guys know I think this is important. We're going to talk about a few different reasons which matter for strategy, matter for what's going on in the world, okay, and all that stuff. There we go. Matter for your own personal strategy as well, too. And here we are. So Bitcoin blasts past $68,000 after U.S. Treasury doubles debt buybacks. Okay, so Bitcoin is closing in on 70,000 for the first time since June. Why did this happen? Okay, so the Treasury Department said Wednesday, this is a big reason why, that it will more than double the size of its government debt repurchases due to fixed income markets under pressure and yields surging to levels not seen in nearly 20 years. The increase in buyback operation sizes, the increase in the buyback operation size reflects Treasury's desire to provide greater liquidity support in long debated nominal sectors where there's a consistent, strong sponsorship from market participants. Okay. So a couple other things happen too, right? Long-term yields reduce the opportunity cost of holding non-yield assets like Bitcoin and gold. So what does this mean? There's more liquidity in the market, right? There's more chance to borrow. Also, there was a big crunch that happened where people that were betting against Bitcoin breaking past 66,000, I think it was 67,000, betting against that, their short bets, they shorted Bitcoin, got called. I believe it was $1.2 billion. What did that cause happen? That triggered a $1.2 billion buying of Bitcoin, which caused the price to surge, right? Now, in the overall analysis, could this cause a Bitcoin bull market? It could. It could trigger a bull right now, or it could dip back down in a week, okay? But a couple other things are happening right now. So Bitcoin is behaving like a risk asset, surging with stocks on the news, okay, with oil, the war, stuff like that. But now it's going to probably begin to decouple itself with that. So let's take a look at this one really fast. Major catalyst, U.S. Treasury Secretary fuels Bitcoin price surge. And again, I want to tie this back to the whole situation with Russia, with Iran, with the U.S., okay? There is a lot of reason to believe that in the near future, not too distant future, let me say it that way, that Bitcoin will play a tremendous role in the financial markets and the financial architecture of the United States, of the world. If you were with us last week on Wednesday, we talked about the fact that Russia had just approved and legalized Bitcoin for international trade. Okay. Last November 2025, they did an $11 billion test to see if it would work to get paid for their oil and their precious metals and international trade of these things. It worked. Vladimir Putin signed the law last week, a week ago. Okay. Which led me to believe that Iran has long been doing this to stay afloat. How do they keep on having missiles? Everyone talks about homegrown entrepreneurship. Yeah, but homegrown entrepreneurship isn't going to get you to be able to pay for Chinese parts, Russian parts, right? They can give them out of the goodness of their heart, but you got to give something back. And then also, how do you pay Iran? How do you fund them so they can do things? Bitcoin is nearly untraceable. Okay, it's no government can control it. It can't actually be traced because of the blockchain with forensics they can see, but it can't always be associated to specific people, okay? Unless you're in the US using a certain exchange, things like that. So that's my understanding of it. Other people might understand a lot more about it. But what I want to tell you is no government can control the flow. You can't shut it down right now. There's no SWIFT banking system to say, haha, don't pay Russia. The Russia's like, well, we're using Bitcoin now. You can't do that anymore, right? We're going to use this underground crypto market that is owned by no one, that's owned by the people of the world, right? Owned by all the millions and millions of computers around the world, tens of millions of computers. The blockchain exists on all these places and all of this. And I think Iran's doing the same thing. So here's the thing. The US right now is rushing to create more legislation, more control to dominate the cryptocurrency market, in particular Bitcoin. I'm going to play a video here in a second. But a major catalyst for the boost of Bitcoin came from the U.S. Treasury Secretary, okay? Bitcoin, and I'm going to read this here really fast. Bitcoin climbed over 66,000, touching 67,000. It's now at 68,000, marking its highest level in a month. This surge is driven by a bullish BlackRock CEO prediction and increasing confidence in the passage of the Clarity Act. Okay. The Clarity Act, we'll describe it here in a second, a crucial crypto market structure bill. Okay. President Trump's recent agreement to an ethics provision, which bans federal officials, this is important, bans federal officials from using cryptocurrencies and assigns enforcement to the Justice Department, has significantly boosted the bill's prospects. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent declared lawmakers are at the 1 yard line for the Clarity Act, which is viewed as the ultimate catalyst to open the market to Wall Street and trigger a new institutional bull run. One of the biggest things that scares crypto investors, okay, and crypto people, okay, is government ownership, government dominance. They want government support, but they want government hands off like a free market. And so President Trump stepped into this. Obviously, he's got some real interest in it, as we all know. His sons do, okay, but stepped into this, creating the Clarity Act. So government officials cannot take control of this. They cannot issue cryptocurrencies. So that means like Treasury cannot print cryptocurrency, right? So it's going to be untampered with, still in the vision of, if you know about the white paper from Satoshi, still stay in its purity, so to speak, okay, of being unregulated. And that's where it's staying. So this is the ultimate catalyst to open the market to Wall Street and trigger a new institutional bull run. Again, for all of you as personal investors, this is huge institutional confidence that Bitcoin's going nowhere. Major cryptocurrency like Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, okay, even XRP. I personally, I think I would advise you, again, this is just my personal thoughts. You do what you want, right? Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial expert, blah, 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 all this stuff like that. Okay, you do what you want. But me personally, I like Bitcoin and I like Ethereum. I do like the technology for Solana, but I think I don't want to go too far out from that orbit, from those three. Okay. Bitcoin all day long. I believe in that. Okay. So that's me, but you do what you want. And hopefully you learn something from this. But again, remember, this is all connected because there's a behind the scenes race for this new currency, for this new financial system, this new financial way to move money. If you don't get anything else, understand that on the blockchain are rails to move value. You can move $1 billion of crypto, of Bitcoin, and it might cost you $100, $200 transaction fee, maybe $1,000. I might be wrong. Maybe $1,000 transaction fee for $1 billion. And it happens with light speed and no real official approvals, no talks. If you try to move $1 billion from bank to bank, you're going to wait a long time. You're going to have massive fees. There's going to be regulatory government impact, people stopping you. So do you see strategically why countries would want to get involved in this? Why Russia's getting involved? Why Iran's definitely involved? Okay. Why you've had all these South American countries starting to legalize Bitcoin? Okay. So put that all together and understand how this is impacting our future world and our fighting world right now and the geopolitics too. Okay. As a strategist, seeing what technologies, tools are coming and what resources are coming down the pipe. Okay. So the White House crypto advisor, Patriot, even deferred military leave to see the bill through its critical August recess window. While optimism is high, some analysts remain cautious about Bitcoin's trajectory without further major catalysts, just so we're all aware of that. Okay. Just want to bring that up. We're going to look at this video really quick right here, so we're all caught up to speed. Make sure I'm sharing this. Okay, here we go. Awesome. Check it out.
Executive order banning any attempt to create a central bank digital currency.
So this is important. This is where he's saying no government officials can get involved on cryptocurrency. Banning a central bank to control cryptocurrencies, okay, or to regulate them. Here we go.
Executive order banning any attempt to create a central bank digital currency. We launched Project Crypto to modernize rules so that our financial markets can move into blockchain technology. I established the United States Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, making Bitcoin a permanent asset of the United States Treasury, which has turned out incredibly well. I also created the United States Digital Asset Stockpile to hold custody of all other digital assets, and that's exactly what it's done. It's been amazing. 1 year ago this summer, I signed landmark legislation known as the Genius Act. I named it after myself. I didn't want to use my name, so I just called it the Genius Act.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. we just like, I need to stop for it. We don't stop for it anymore, but I know he's funny, very funny, but it's unbelievable, right? You know, anyway.
Paving the way for widespread adoption of dollar-backed stablecoins, and that's worked out very well. Every single American benefits enormously from our country's status as the financial center of the world, and we want to keep it that way. We're leading by leaps and bounds. We've gained so much in the last 16 months like nobody can believe, actually. Not only that, but we have more money being invested in the United States than any country at any time in history. Money's coming in by the trillions. Our nation's economic dominance drives trillions of dollars in investments, creates millions of jobs, and expands access credit.
All right. So I think we heard enough there. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. And again, why does this all matter? What, okay, so hey, cool, Ben. Should I invest in Bitcoin? Like what are we doing this for? What are we talking about, right? I think it's really, really important that we understand that, why does this matter? So, okay, the Iran crypto story, we talked about this. And I asked this before, is there real evidence for Iran routing around the U.S. financial system with crypto? There is, and it's documented, okay? Just like I talked about. The toll booth, you don't need to look any further than that. Guys, listen to me. If you love freedom, okay, I love freedom. I'm just going to say this. You want to be able to have control of your money and no one can just take it from you. No one can just, control it, devalue it, deflate it, tax it, all these things that, tax it to death, devalue it, like I said, manipulate it, inflate it, all these things, print more of it. And then the argument for Bitcoin, for this type of crypto, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, is this, right? Okay. So that's it. Exactly. So, and I see different thoughts in the chat about it, but I'm just saying that, whoever is controlling the financial system, who's controlling the money, they have all the control, right? So if you have something that's a little more, that's not a little more, that's decentralized, where governments can't inflate it, they can't seize it, they can't, do all these things, then it gives you as an individual a lot more agency, okay, over a lot of things. And not to mention, it's very, very fast. It's a much faster financial system, okay? So anyway, I don't know everything about it. Clearly, probably not. Many of us know more. I'm sure a few of you know quite a bit about it as well. But anyway, I think it's important to take a look at it. But there is evidence that Iran is going around the financial system by using this, right? So the IRGC has charged ships up to $2 million to transit the Strait of Hormuz in Chinese yuan or also Bitcoin, okay? That's what they take to pay the $2 million, right? They've admitted this already. They've already talked about it, that they enable payments through the Financial Times quoted Hamid Hosseini of Iran's Oil and Gas Exporters Union describing the process. Tankers email Iranian authorities about cargo. Authorities name the toll. Payment is in digital currency. They never have to stop. They're like, look, you want to come through? Just hit us up with 2 million in Bitcoin or Ethereum. I think Bitcoin's the only thing they take. And you're good. He referenced Bitcoin specifically. And the reason he gave it was that it could not be traced or seized. Okay? It's outside the financial system. So there it is. Public estimates ran as high as $20 million per day from oil tankers alone, 20 million in Bitcoin. Can you imagine this? And 600 to 800 million per month if there were the liquid natural gas carriers are included. Insane, right? So in May, Iran launched a Bitcoin settled insurance product for the Hormuz Strait to transit the Hormuz Straits, the Strait of Hormuz. Western maritime insurance runs on Western banks, so it cannot access those. Iran can't access the Western maritime insurance. So it built its own. It's a Bitcoin backed and settled insurance. And so that's what they give to them to insure to go through the straits. All run on Bitcoin. Okay. We're seeing how it is. There, again, the workarounds for the financial system, they start out slowly. They start kind of quietly, kind of secretively, and they gather steam. So Iran's been doing it. Now Russia's doing it, right? Russia didn't even legalize it till last week. And now it's starting to happen more and more. Treasury sanctioned Iran's largest crypto exchange in June In mid-July, 4 wallets tied to Iran's central bank were designated, and Tether froze about $130 million sitting in one of them, okay? An earlier April freeze ran around $340 million. So there are other firms that run things that can't be touched or that won't do that, right? So this is also, again, the reach of the U.S. Treasury, that they can influence the companies where they're holding these. A lot of people will take them off the exchanges and put them into cold storage as well too, where it's more secure. Okay, clearly Iran's not doing that as a country. They're keeping it on a crypto exchange. But if they put it into cold storage in a cold storage wallet, no one can really touch it. Okay, and I'm sure they'll come up with other methods. So, all right. So there's a lot of talk about there, but we could stay at that all night. Okay. Hopefully you found that interesting. It's definitely something that's moving and shaking right now. I don't know everything about it, but I got a decent idea on some of the things. And I enjoy the exchanges and discussion. Enjoy the discussion. Yeah, I see some of the comments in there too. Criminal tools, things like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, man. I think there's a big freight train coming through town, and I think it's important to understand how it's used. It's a way to, Western Union. If you're wiring money around, right? That seems like magic at first. Don't trust it, but people did it all the time, and now it's become very normal to wire money. So Bitcoin as a medium of transfer of wealth and of value, I think that's probably one of the most viable things. But seems like powers that be are getting behind it, and there are a lot of institutional interest and investment. They're starting to regulate it. And so I think less and less, like some of the concerns about it being a criminal network tool, that's a long time ago. It's not as much anymore. And as you can see, Treasury could reach down, talk to the companies that own the exchanges and say, look, we're going to give you a hard time if you don't freeze those accounts and those assets of Iran, for example. So less and less, I think, you're going to see this as like the concern of it being a criminal tool. I think probably 16 years ago, 18, maybe 12, 16 years ago, you could make that argument. But I think it's different. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. You can do what you want. Like I said, I don't care what you do, right? You want to take paper dollars and put them under your bed? Have at it. I'm giving you what I know, and you can use it. Don't use it. It's up to you. It's just like AI. No AI. Okay, that's fine. Don't use it. That's fine. Do what you want. Don't use an iPhone. Don't get on the internet. Why are you here right now? Right? I mean, do what you want. I'm going to provide my best. You make up your own mind. I don't sit down here and try to argue with you. I'm right. I don't really care. I just do what I think. And if it helps you, cool. If it doesn't, and you want to, if you're seeking to test your ideas and theories and want to discuss them, great. But if you come in the chat and you're like, this is the way it is, well, cool, man. You can have your opinion, but that's not what this chat's about, right? Is no one's gonna. We're not in here to proclaim the king who knows everything. So anyway, but you make up your own mind, man. I present what I think is important, and everybody makes up their own mind and can go about it from there. Hopefully, we all get a little better, and we can all have a new way to look at it. And for sure, you can't ignore potential risks and threats. That is not what I'm saying. You have to take that in and take everything very seriously. But then again, as I always say, what constitutes a true threat? A capability plus an intention, right? And as I said before, if your assumption is X, you want to say, what is the probability that I'm right about that assumption? What is the probability that I'm wrong? How accurate is my thinking on this? I say this is this. Well, you're thinking that this is this. How accurate is that? Is it dated? Is it behind? How much do you actually know? How much do you know about this thing that you're discussing? Right? I say it to myself. I'm like, how much do I actually know? So, I think that's always a way to go about it and be open to new ideas. And hey, it's on you. Anyway, cool. One last thing. And actually, I think we're going to go ahead, and we've been going for a little while here. We're going to go ahead and end it out here. It's great to be with you guys tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much, SRP Valkyrie. Thank you so much for the 10 jewels there. I see that. I appreciate it. We got no other super chats to do tonight, which is totally fine. Appreciate you guys being here tonight. Appreciate your time as always. Appreciate all the loyal members of the chat and all my members. I appreciate you guys. Like I always say, you know, I think it's so important just to hear many sides, look at many different aspects, test your assumptions before you're making a decision when you have time. If you have to go with your gut, make sure you're checking in with your head, because usually you're going to have enough time to check with your head, check with your heart. Don't overanalyze, but really look at the brutal facts and make sure you're testing your assumptions before you jump into something you don't know what the second and third order effects are. All right, everybody, like I always say, make yourselves better, make the world better. Have an amazing, amazing rest of your week. It's been super fun. I always love the lively debates, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I will see you Wednesday. We'll be back for a War Room recall on Wednesday. Next time on Monday and Wednesday, I'll stream on my system that has all the music, or I'll figure it out here. We'll get all that going again. I just happen to have all the stream keys and stuff like that all funneled into this one tonight. So like I always say, believe in yourselves. I believe in you. And go get yours. I'll see you all on Friday. Key the music. Dun, 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 dun. All right. See you guys soon. Take care.